Welcome back, Silver Bull fans. Welcome back to Silver Bull channel. Had a lot of people say, what a libertarian in Australia. And I'd say, yes, and we even have a constitution in Australia. And like many constitutions, it tries to be ignored at times. Our constitution isn't so much like the American one. We don't have the Bill of Rights attached to it, and the right to bear arms and things like that. But it's more about how the states work with each other and what the federal government's supposed to do. But an interesting one here, I had someone ask me a question, where's gold or silver in the Constitution? It's here. It's section 115. Let me bring this up a bit. And it says, a state shall not coin money, nor make anything but gold and silver coin a legal tender in payment of debt. Okay, that has been interpreted in a number of ways, or can be, but basically it means a state's not allowed to print money. That's for the federal government to do. The only way a state government, like let's say Queensland or Western Australia or anything like that, can make something legal tender is to make gold or silver coin. That's why the Perth Mint, which is owned by the West Australian government, can make gold and silver coins and call them legal tender. Alright, because under the Constitution they're allowed to do that. Alright, so that's one interpretation. There's another interpretation that has never, as far as I know, really been taken to federal court. And that's that because they're not allowed to make anything but gold and silver coin a legal tender in payment of debts, that any debt to a state government should be a debt in gold or silver coin, i.e. you get a infringement notice from the government for something, or a bill from the government, your stamp duty, your things like that. There are those who would argue that the state can only require you to pay in gold or silver coin. And because gold or silver coin is not provided, therefore all their request for a payment of debt is null and void. I'd be interested to see how that would go in court. I would think in a lower court it would be struck down pretty quickly, but you'd have to go all the way up to the highest court of the land to really test that out, and unfortunately that takes money, and the vast majority of citizens, it's just far cheaper for them to pay their stamp duty or whatever than to go all the way on a principle. But I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read that, nor make anything but gold and silver coin a legal tender in payment of debts, I could see a smart lawyer arguing that point, that all state debts should be paid in gold and silver coin. So that's interesting as well. Another important one here is section 116. The Commonwealth shall not make any law for establishing any religion, or imposing any religious observance, or for prohibiting the free exercise of any religion. And no religious test shall be required as a qualification for any office or public trust in the Commonwealth. So unlike Britain, where for a long while the Church of England, you had to be a member to get a state job. I think maybe even to this day, they still spend some state funds on the Church of England. Australia wasn't going to have that. We weren't going to make any laws. Some people have argued, that only prohibits the Commonwealth. The states can make any laws that they want. I totally disagree with that as well, because where state and Commonwealth law conflict, the Commonwealth law should override. So my argument would be this law here should override any state law. Now, some have said that's not the case, but that's the only way I see it could be logically interpreted. If this Commonwealth can't make any law for establishing any religion or imposing any religious observance, neither could any state that is a member of that Commonwealth. suggest that they could, to me, is ridiculous. So this is a great thing for Australia. It basically says we have the freedom of religion, and the state and religion should be separate. All right, doesn't matter if you're a Muslim, a Hindu, a Scientologist. It doesn't matter. You can take any office or public trust under the Commonwealth. It means you can be a member of Parliament. You're not going to have your own personal religious beliefs stop you from having the same rights as all the other citizens. Here's another interesting one that I'd like to see tested. It's section 117. A subject of the Queen resident in any state shall not be subject in any other state to any disability or discrimination which would not be equally applicable to him if he were subject of the Queen resident in any other such state. That basically tries to say that you're not supposed to get any special advantages for living in one state over another. It would be interesting to see that play out in a federal court as well, because obviously there are differences between the states on various things. The cost of car registration. I mean, how far does that any disability or discrimination go? Does it mean because stamp duty costs more in, let's say, one state to another, is that unlawful? Because, by the sounds of it, it should be equally applicable if you were in any state. Or is it just talking about Commonwealth laws, so the Commonwealth can't discriminate? And in that case, does that then make their laws in regards to, for example, Aboriginal communities where they want to make them a dry community, does that make that legislation unlawful because it's a disability or discrimination that's not applicable to every resident of the state? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't have a sway one way or another on that. I'm just asking the question. And these are questions that only, at the end of the day, a full bench of the Supreme Court in Australia could answer. Once again, to take anything up there would be an expensive exercise, and only special interest groups or a lawyer wanting to make a name for himself, or who's really interested in something, could obviously do something like that. But for a monetary sort of thing, I wonder where with that, you can get a tax break if you live in a isolated area in Australia, for example. If you live north of Cairns and Cape York, for example, you get a extra tax deduction. You get more on your tax return. And partly that's because the state probably feels that you're not getting as many of the Commonwealth services as other members do in the larger cities. So they feel it's only fair that you get extra money back from the government because you're not getting the same level of services as people in the big cities, for example. My argument would be that then is creating an advantage to where you live in a state, and would that also come into play? If you've got any discussions, put them below. Make sure you put your comments there. What do you think of our Constitution? Is it not enough? Is it good? I personally believe too many Australians are ignorant when it comes to our Constitution. I don't think too many politicians have even read the thing, especially about that gold and silver coin. I'd love to see that tested in a court, because they're not to make anything but gold or silver coin. That's a state, so obviously the Commonwealth can make anything else legal tender, and it has. It's made the Australian dollar legal tender in payments of debt. So that's not preventing the Commonwealth, all right? but this is referring to a state, i.e. Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, Western Australia, and of course applies to the territories, Australian Capital Territory, Northern Territory. So a state's not allowed to coin money unless it's gold or silver coin, okay? And legal payment of debt. There is an argument, though, that some have made that then that means that should apply to any debts to the states. Anyhow, there's the Australian Constitution. It can be found at the Australian Government website. This is under Senate, and it's there, and it's, you know, it can be read. There's a whole bunch of content. There's preambles. There's things about being able to sue people who are in Parliament who are there unlawfully. It's something like £5 a day or whatever. They haven't updated the Constitution in regards to it. But yeah, the right is of any citizen to sue that person. So, you know, it could very quickly bankrupt any individual if every single Australian sued them for the equivalent of £5. What if it was argued in court that was £5 of gold? There have been rare occasions when someone's been sitting, or it's been argued they've been sitting in the Senate or Parliament illegally, i.e. they haven't renounced total citizenship in another country, or there's a conflict of interest that's been undeclared. But anyhow, Australian Constitution, if you've got a bit of time, worth a read. And it's also interesting there, somewhere it refers to New Zealand, okay? The state shall mean such colonies of New South Wales, New Zealand. Alright? You didn't know that, did you? Alright? So, that was because originally they invited New Zealand to be part of Australia. The Kiwis came over to the Federation conventions and that. They got treated like shit. So they decided no, they wouldn't join Australia and they'd be their own independent country. And they've stayed that way. But it is there in the Constitution, alright? The state shall mean the colonies of New South Wales, New Zealand, Queensland, Tasmania, Victoria, Western Australia and South Australia. So that's interesting as well. Does that mean Australia argues it actually has sovereignty over New Zealand? Because what you've got to understand, when before New Zealand became a country, it actually was under the jurisdiction of New South Wales. So a smart lawyer might, when he gets to the end of his rope in New Zealand with their Court of Appeals, might argue that the ultimate jurisdiction belongs to perhaps the Supreme Court of New South Wales. I haven't seen that argued yet, but that would be interesting to see as well. It all gets very complicated when you get into some of this legal stuff. It's unfortunate we don't have people who write laws to make them as simple as possible for everyone to understand. Everything's in legal speak. And some things have been interpreted to have multiple meanings, or sometimes their meanings have even changed over time. For example, in Australia, a classic example would be the Mabo decision, where they said Australia wasn't terra nullius, and that changed a whole lot of things for land rights. Though originally that original case was referring to people in the Torres Strait Islands, but they've since, you know, lawyers have cleverly then applied it to the whole of Australia. So sometimes, you know, you get a little wedge in some pieces of legislation or some legal ruling, and it opens up a huge can of worms. But that's an interesting one as well, just where New Zealand appears in the Australian Constitution. I've exercised my right under that. I've become an Australian citizen, even though I was born in New Zealand. I have Australian ancestors as well, and the two countries are very close, but they are, you know, at this time, two separate countries. That's Silver Bull Channel out on the Australian Constitution. I hope that answered some questions some people asked. And if you've got any further questions, put them in the comments below, and I'll go more into it. Some people, they're not that interested in these things, so I won't go too much onto it, but I thought it was worth a quick video. Silver Bull channel, or well, a long video. Silver Bull channel out.